Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Man We Need to Talk, the podcast that focuses on male mental health and the stigmas that are still attached to it in today's modern society. I'm joined today by Daniel Beckitt. He is a Wim Hof Method Instructor, and he also is going to share his opinions on male mental health. Thanks for joining us. How have you been, mate?
Yeah, crazy 2020, right? I've been good. I've been okay, and I've also been very down. And I think a lot of people will empathize with that.
Yeah.
Frustration, anger. Let's explore the whole emotional spectrum here. I've felt it all and still continue to do so. It's been a very tough year, and anyone who says no, I think they're lying. So, yeah, it's been tough for everyone. But yeah, I've had my moments for sure.
Yeah, so Daniel, if you wouldn't mind just sharing with us a little bit about your upbringing and where you're from and stuff like that, that'd be awesome.
Okay, name is Daniel. I was born in Northampton, UK. I've lived here pretty much all my life. I'm 38 years of age. And for the past year or so, it's the first time I've actually felt like an actual adult. What do I mean by that? Taking full responsibility for myself and my choices, taking full responsibility for my mental health, physical health, emotional health, spiritual health. It's taken me 36, 37, 38 years to come to that conclusion that it's all on me. You know, it may not be my fault, but it is my responsibility. So growing up, I was in a very loving household, lots of love. There were a few tragedies that hit our way, which we can talk about later, which I didn't really deal with effectively, the ways that I know now what to do. And those traumas were suppressed. And then as I grew up, especially moving into my teens, moved into quite destructive behaviors, which then led into my 20s and 30s of addiction patterns, narcissism, repressed anger, all that kind of thing. So, yeah, that's that's it in a nutshell.
What sort of struggles would you say that you've had with mental health in your life then, Daniel?
Wow, where do I start? So I would say it really came about in my early 20s. I grew up as a teenager. I was pretty insecure. I know a lot of us teenagers are at that time, you know, peer pressure and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But when I was 12 years old, my brother passed away all suddenly, which was a massive shock to the system that I've come to terms with it fully and completely now. But back as a teenager and growing up, I didn't. And I turned that into anger at myself and anger at the world.
How old were you at the time when that happened?
I was 12 years old, and my brother was 4, who passed away. He had a severe disability, cerebral palsy. And alongside that, we kind of grew up with not much money. So there was always this chip on my shoulder. So I had this chip on my shoulder that was growing more and more. Then the death of my brother, which happened completely out of the blue, like we just didn't see it coming. So it was like a hand grenade went off in the family, bang. And
yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was the whole, you know, kind of stiff upper lip, just try and get on with it the best we can. But with a young, impressionable mind, I didn't quite know how to negotiate my way through that. And my mum and dad were amazing. I'm not taking anything away. They gave to me what they had in their resources and how they grew up, of course. It's the generational thing, right? But those problems that were not addressed were like a seed, a dark seed that grew and grew and grew. And then in my late teens, early 20s, the narcissism emerged, the aggression. So I'd go out into town, and every Friday, Saturday night, I'd get into trouble. I'd get into fights. And then that would progress into overuse of alcohol, overuse of sex to try and make myself feel better. Going from job to job to job, trying to find my way through this pain. I just didn't want to address it. And that accumulated to my mid-20s, where I tried to commit suicide.
Okay.
And you would think that would be the initial rock bottom, like you can't go any lower than that. But again, that wasn't even rock bottom enough, because I still refused to see the deeper issues that are in me. And then a few months later, I tried again. And it was that point where I kind of put my hand up and I said, I surrender. I need help here, like real help. And I was put into a mental health unit. There's one in Northampton called Berrywood, which were amazing. I was in there for 3 days. I was on various medications, and then I started the route of counseling, psychotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, and then it was a long, winding, scenic road to where I am now. So yeah.
Okay, wow. So it sounds like you've had some real struggles there. At the time when you were sort of really down in the dumps as such and things like that, do you think it was all then really stemming from sort of what happened when you were younger and not really dealing with that at the time? Or would you say it's something that's you kind of coasting along in life rather than being true to yourself, and that sort of leads to crisis, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all things. I think trauma at a young age is a big thing. And I talk about it, on the workshops that you've attended, and
Yeah.
why I went into the Wim Hof method, which we'll talk about later. But there are studies to suggest that even those without trauma in inverted commas, still relative to the individual, you can still have issues. For example, not walking your true path, not speaking your truth, confidence issues, that kind of thing. So they all compound and layer on to each other. And unless we work through those issues, they will continue to build like bricks. And my metaphor is we end up building skyscrapers on sand. We build and build and build and chase and chase and chase through the ego. But because that foundation isn't solid, all it takes is one push and the whole thing comes down.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I think there's a lot of people doing that, not really living a life that's really true to them. And
Yes.
a lot of people attach to like material things, don't they, Daniel?
Yes.
So, and then that gives like a temporary reprieve. You can get like a thrill when you buy something new.
Right.
But in terms of long term, it's not really a solution, is it?
No. It's they're dopamine hits.
Yeah.
They give us a little bit of joy. That hormone kicks in, but the nature of dopamine, it always wants more, whether that's material possession, gambling, alcohol, sex, whatever. Anything we're trying to do to run away from our issues as opposed to work through them, the truth will always out. And that's been very true to me numerous times in my life. If we keep trying to suppress, it ends up being putting a plaster on a shotgun wound. It's not enough.
Yeah, but it's so easy to fall into that trap, isn't it? With like material stuff and that,
Yeah.
So, Daniel, I can remember I used to go to a gym in town. I can remember you as a personal trainer then. So, tell us a little bit how you got into personal training and sort of a little bit about that and how that worked for you. And
okay, well, that's a really interesting story because that was like the conception point for a lot of self-discovery. And I know that kind of sounds pretentious, but it is what it is, right? So,
yeah,
I was in a warehouse job, dead-end job. I had a succession of dead-end jobs. I had a relationship that come to an end, and I was in my 30s. I was still living with my parents. I couldn't afford a car. I just felt like a bum, right? I was sleeping in the conservatory because they didn't have much room because of my brothers. But grateful to have a roof over my head. But I was pretty down.
Yeah.
And then my mum, who was a member of the gym, Fitness for Less in town in Seoul Central, she said they're looking for apprentice roles. And usually an apprentice role would be, 16, 17, 18, because it's like £2 an hour. But just something lit up in me. I was like, I'm on low pay as it is working in a warehouse, picking and packing. Can I really go somewhere which is even less money? But this seed wouldn't go. I just kept thinking about it over and over. And I was into fitness at the time. I was going to the gym. That was the one thing I did have, fitness. And I thought, what have I got to lose? And I went for an interview, got the job as an apprentice. And then from there, I really started to discover my passion for teaching and coaching. And as I moved through the personal training game and started to build up my confidence with leading classes and personal training clients, a opportunity came my way to work in India, Goa.
Wow. Okay.
My partner, yeah. So a friend, it was all crazy. A friend of mine on Facebook advertised that this new independent school was opening in the UK, an international school, opening in India. And I said to my partner, Heather, who's a teacher, go ahead and go for it. She got the job. I cheekily insisted, oh, would the school need a PT? Never thinking in a million years they would. And she came back to me, the headmistress, and said, could you adapt your training for kids? And I was like, yeah, sure. Kind of winged it at the time. That happened. So I started to teach PE to kids. It was like a real intensive learning curve for me. I then had PT clients out there. I then found my way into FIFA.
Okay.
Crazy story. The head coach of the Goan under 18s football squad, I started to PT and train. And he said, could you transfer your skills to training my squad? So that was my first professional gig as a FIFA coach. So I was their strength and conditioning coach for a couple of seasons, which was an amazing, like a dream come true. So that's how I moved from going in as an apprentice PT to training professional athletes. And gratefully, that happened relatively quickly.
Okay, and how was your mental health at this point? So have you improved from where you were? Was it like a gradual process of improvement, or are you still not really there?
Yes, well, this is the thing. This is the integral part of the jigsaw. So on paper, on Instagram and Facebook, it looked like I had the dream life. This was what I would put on the vision board. You know, those vision boards that people do?
Yeah, I know them.
So I was training professional athletes. I was on good money. I had a motorbike. I had this apartment in Goa, which is paradise, 2 minutes away from the beach. Like you could hear the waves coming in. I only had to work, and something I loved, maybe 5 hours a week to sustain my lifestyle. Yet, something still wasn't right. I was very grateful for what I had, and I wasn't depressed. You know, I didn't want to kill myself. I wasn't taking antidepressants, but something didn't feel balanced.
Yeah.
And what I come to believe, and we'll talk about it in a bit with Wim Hof Method and stuff, I am a believer in that the mind is a mirror of the subconscious body. Mind and body are the same thing. They're mirrors.
Okay.
And because I was repressing something that wasn't right, I ended up having a huge asthma attack, which I had to quit the football squad. I had to come back to the UK. And that was the whole lifting the mirror up in front of my face and going, what the hell is going on? I had this dream life. Why was I feeling so incomplete? And that started my next journey.
Okay, so I imagine it was super stressful as well when you had to give that up. You had something going on. You had to then return. So how did that make you feel as well?
Well, this is the thing that we talk about material success, and sometimes we can define ourselves by our jobs and careers. So, working so hard to become a PT for professional athletes. Right, tick. What's next? There's always that wanting. And I created an identity in that. And this perfect lifestyle was amazing, but I still hadn't addressed those core issues in me. I still hadn't addressed those issues that I had as a child, really. And they were coming back into my circumstance. So I was back in the UK. I was back in a flat in Northampton. And I was like, what the hell? Like I was ticking the mental health boxes, and I'm back here again. And there was this whole anger at life kind of thing. Like, what more do I need to do to be happy? And it was there. I went onto Facebook, scrolling through, and I saw a guy called Wim Hof and him taking cold showers. And I was like, cold showers, how's that going to do it? And this was November at the time, so it was cold, end of November. Took a cold shower, and as you know, you've done cold therapy stuff.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And I looked at myself in the mirror, and for the first time in a long time, that narrative of you're not good enough, what am I meant to do in my life, blah 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 blah, was gone.
That horrible internal voice that we all have.
Yeah. And I was present, and I was in the bathroom, and the cold, I was shivering, but I felt really in my body. And then as I warmed up, the day went on, and the narrative continued, but I thought there's something to that. So I took another cold shower the next day, and another, and I did it for 2 weeks, and I thought something is changing. And then the PT in me wanted to investigate further, so I started to look into the science of it and the Wim Hof method as a whole comprehensive technique. And that's what started me becoming a coach, and then leading on to the workshops, and it transformed my life.
Okay, so that was really the catalyst for change for you then. So that's when you really
Yes.
had that moment where you were like, wow,
Yes.
this is going to be the change for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. And leading into that, so bear in mind there were also other journeys that occurred when I came back from India. So I started to explore plant medicines. I don't know if you've heard of like ayahuasca,
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
mushroom ceremonies with shaman. I started to investigate into meditation, like Vipassana meditations, which were 10-day silent retreats. I started to explore fasting and the health benefits of the body and the mind and the spirit. So it was all these things kind of came together. I started to read more books on the subject, and then I discovered the Wim Hof method. So it was almost like that was a big part, but there were other things that led me onto that path, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And just touching on what you said about meditation, that's something that I personally do every day. Is it something that you practice regularly? And what's your thoughts on meditation? Just give us a little bit of background about how it helps you.
Meditation is an amazing thing. And I just want to state that meditation isn't necessarily sitting in like cross-legged, eyes closed, like a Buddha. You can
Yeah.
meditate while you walk. Meditation for me is being absolutely present in this moment now. That is meditation. And so sometimes I will actively meditate. And by that, I mean, I'll do some Wim Hof method breathing in the morning and have 5 to 10 minutes where I am sat up or lying down and being present. Or sometimes I'll actually do it when I'm in my car or going for a walk or going for a run. By that, I just focus on my breath. And if the thoughts take me away, I pull it back to center and be incredibly focused. So if I'm driving, I'll turn the radio off, and maybe for 5 minutes on my commute to work, I'll be very present in what I do in my body, how I indicate, how I look in the mirrors, just being very present and focusing on my breath. So yeah, meditation can take many forms.
It's so powerful, isn't it? Just
It
being,
really is.
even just the notion of being present, especially in
Yeah,
this day and age where we're all like looking at our phones so much. And don't get me wrong, social media is an amazing thing because you can launch things like this podcast, etc., and you can promote
yeah,
things and do things and connect with people. However, really, if you look at Facebook and social media, it's like a collection of things that are going to happen or have happened already. It's not about being present, So I think we're going further away from that, as humanity. So
yeah,
meditation for me is becoming all the more important because it's
yes,
almost like I can remember when I was younger, I can remember being more present because you'd be like playing out with your mates and doing stuff like that, and you'd just be generally more present because there's like less phones and that. You'd be more present in the moment. But now I
yeah.
think we're going further and further away from that. So whilst meditation's always been relevant, I'd say it's probably more relevant now than ever because the brain's constantly being overworked, isn't it, Daniel?
Yeah, for sure. We are being bombarded with devices that seek our attention. And again, it's the dopamine hits. And even social media has been engineered to make it addictive. There's a clear definition. There's a program called, I can't remember what the program's called, but they talk about how tools are starting to change. So, for example, a hammer is a useful tool, right? But it doesn't pull you in. It's just when you need that hammer, you take it to bang a nail in. Whereas a phone as a tool, I can place it down and I'll be just here and it will just start to pull me in. And I have to check it all the time and I have to check notifications and how many likes I get and all that kind of thing. And like you say perfectly, that technology is amazing. Social media is amazing. It allows us to connect. But as the needle has moved to the other end of the spectrum where we are constantly comparing ourselves to others, and how true is the story that we're putting out on social media, with all the filters that are needed and all the holiday pics and the picture of the new car and all this kind of thing. It's like, let's not forget we're all human beings with our own issues, and people will generally only present their best life on social media, right?
Yeah,
Like
guilty
all
of it
that
myself.
glitters. Yeah, we're all liable to it, right? But all that glitters isn't gold.
Very
And yeah,
true. Very true.
don't necessarily believe the hype. I've fallen for that one on social media.
Yeah, no, I think it can be really damaging in some ways. People projecting one thing and it's not really a
Yeah,
reality. And then if people are looking at that, they're then worrying they're not good enough, and then
right.
they're failing to accept themselves more. I think that's more of a problem now. A lot of people not accepting themselves because they feel as though they're not good enough because of what they see on social media. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, constantly seeking external validation. But in
Yeah.
doing so, you're weakening yourself, your being, because you need others to top you up. That shouldn't be the case, and I say that with no judgment. We're all liable to it. I certainly am. But that's the line that we need to walk.
Yeah, exactly. One other thing I wanted to pick your brains on, Daniel, was why do you think men find it so difficult to talk about their problems? I know you had mental health problems. I mean, did you have anyone that you confided to, or did you try and deal with it all yourself, like I personally have, and lots of the men do at the moment?
Yeah, I think it's a generational thing. We may, as men, find it hard to talk about our feelings and our emotions. But then if you look back a generation back to our fathers and then our grandfathers, there's like massive differences between the generations.
Yeah, totally.
And I think it's how men, and I speak in generalizations, how society defines roles within gender. So, you are a man, and as a strong man, you are a provider, you are a protector, but you don't talk about emotions or feelings because that is weakness, So we cannot show our weakness because then that means we are not strong. And there's this cycle. And as children, boys and girls, we can be emotive, we can talk about these things, but there becomes a point that as we grow older, perhaps we are learning from our fathers or other role models who are male, who cannot express themselves, and we pick up on that, and then we go into the school system, and then we're amongst our friends, and there's this energy of we don't talk about that kind of thing. It's about fighting and football and computer games and all that kind of thing. And as that grows, that shell just increases. It's like layer upon layer upon layer upon layer, and there are just all these boys and men out there who are in pain. And of course, women are and girls are as well. I'm not dismissing that, but for men in general, we find it hard to talk about these things. And usually unfortunately, it takes a big push from the universe to get through those layers, a relationship breakup, losing a business or a job, etc., etc. And it shouldn't have to be that way. It shouldn't have to be that way till it gets to the point where we're holding a massive bomb that's about to go off.
Yeah.
If we spoke about our feelings and seeked help, which isn't weakness, it's strength, it's a pressure valve, and we wouldn't get to those points where it's an absolute bomb that goes off.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a really insightful way to look at it there, actually, because obviously in the last few episodes, I've asked a similar question, and that's really, really quite an insightful way. The way that it all builds up layer on layer is
Right.
like quite an interesting way to look at it. And I can definitely relate to it because, this year for me has been probably the craziest year of my life. I did leave a long-term relationship, and looking back within that relationship, I personally know that I didn't communicate things properly, and that causes a problem, doesn't it? That, at the end of the day, you can't expect the other person to know what you're thinking. So you have to take responsibility for your actions, don't you? When you leave a relationship, you can't just blame the other person. You have to look at it from both perspectives, don't you? And understand your part that you played in it, and then learn from it. Because if you don't learn from it, when you go into the next relationship, you're just going to have the same problem, aren't you?
Yes, for sure. And you're spot on with it's not just the other person. It takes two to tango. And in hindsight, I've had 3 very bad breakups. And it took 3 very bad breakups for me in order to realize, going back to that point of it's maybe not my fault, but it's my responsibility. The previous breakups, it was always me pointing the finger. It's her fault, it's her fault, it's her fault. But then I had to look deeper in and go, well, in those 3 relationships, they broke up with me every time. So maybe it's something to do with me. And that was a whole painful, uncomfortable journey, but a bit like, David Goggins. I don't know if you know his material, the ex-Navy SEAL guy.
Yeah,
Stay hard.
Yeah,
you can't hurt me. Amazing, right?
Yeah.
It's getting uncomfortable with comfortable. And that's the step. It's baby steps into that pain body, like Eckhart Tolle talks about. And if we don't learn by our mistakes, what can happen is subconsciously we draw in that experience again and again and again in order to empower ourselves to learn those lessons. So if we've been in a particularly toxic relationship, which has similar issues, I found that I was going into the same circumstance. Different girl, same issues came up. Different girl, same issues. And that's when I realized it. A lot of that was me. I was drawing it in. And now, thankfully, I'm in a relationship that, of course, is not perfect. No relationship is. But I hold the mirror up now. And I know, I need to be accountable for my actions. And I didn't do that in previous relationships. I just didn't.
Yeah, it's the mirror of accountability, as we like to call it.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, this is something that I'm determined to learn, after what's happened this year. Even though I was the one that left, it's still something that I just want to learn and be strong and learn to, overcome my own personal issues.
Yeah. And congratulations. This is the light side of depression and sadness and anger. There's always a flip side to the coin. And, it sounds cheesy, light at the end of the tunnel and dark night of the soul, all these expressions. I don't know if you've heard, but that's the positive of those moments. Would David Goggins be David Goggins if it wasn't for those experiences? I would argue no. He's had to learn through that darkness and pain that there is light at the other side, but it takes sacrifice, it takes commitment, it takes courage, which we all have in abundance. We just have to remember that. That's all.
That's correct. And I think these sort of crises and big incidents, they happen to everyone, but there's a result. There's two results that happen. And, I do see people who have given up on life, like people who have ended up with addiction problems or, problems that are now destroying their life, and they've given up on their life because of these incidents. So you can either let it consume you, which can happen to anyone. I'm not judging those people because you don't know what people have been through. That can happen to anyone, or you can learn from it and you can move forward. It's one of those two things, isn't it? You either get angry about it, you're angry at the person who just broke out of you, or you're angry at the person who's just done you wrong or whatever. Or you can just accept it and move forward and learn from it and grow from it, can't you? And that's the two different results from a situation like that, isn't it?
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you. And through my life experiences and through what I teach now, I realize the difference between surrender and giving up, because I talk about surrender a lot. And surrender is a good thing. Giving up isn't. And I say this without judgment. And what do I mean between the two? And you mentioned it just now about acceptance. Surrendering is accepting the present moment, the facts that the present moment is showing us, where we're at right now. And it's only then when we surrender to the truth, and the truth can be hard, the truth can be ugly, yet there is beauty in that because it's empowering. When we surrender to that, only then can we negotiate and work our way out of it. Giving up is when we keep doing the same thing over and over, expecting the same results. Giving up is using crutches to not deal with our issues or our pain or our circumstances. For example, sex, alcohol, gambling. We just keep doing the same thing. But even being a workaholic, anything which is taking us away from really knowing ourselves can be an issue. That's the difference between giving up and surrender, for me anyhow.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So let's move on then onto your teaching and about Wim Hof now then. So for anyone that's listening doesn't really know who Wim Hof is, then Daniel, could you just give us a little bit of background about, I know you touched on it a little bit already, but just a bit more insight into who he is and how his story happened and what he does.
Yeah, sure. So Wim Hof is a Dutch guy. I think he's in his 60s now. And he was known as the Dutch daredevil. So he would do crazy things in terms of mind and body. So I'm sure some of you are at least aware, he's best known for his cold therapy and ice. So he's got like over 20 world records, which include running a marathon in the Arctic Circle in shorts and no shoes, being encased in ice for just under 2 hours, swimming. I think he's got the record, or it's just been taken, of swimming underwater in ice in just shorts.
That's extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah. Crazy, crazy things. And scientists were starting to see this, and they thought, well, this guy should be dead. This isn't what science is telling us about how the body can deal and adapt with cold. So they started to run some tests in a university hospital in Holland, and they discovered that Wim Hof can alter and manipulate his nervous system and immune system. Now, it's called autonomic nervous system and immune system, auto, because scientists believed it was merely a subconscious process. We cannot go in and, manipulate or make fine-tuning adjustments. We can't do that. But they discovered that Wim actually can. So then they said, yes, that's all very well, but you're a superhuman. You're 1 in a billion. You're just this genetic freak. And Wim said, I can teach these techniques to other people under scientific scrutiny, under testing. And they were like, well, go ahead. So we took 2 individuals. So this is the training that I've undertaken.
Okay.
We took 10 individuals to Poland, up in the mountains. And you trained them in cold therapy, breath work, which is also part of it, and mindset for 10 days intensive. They then went back to the university hospital, and the 10 that had the Wim Hof method training, the intensive, were all injected with the E. coli virus, dead E. coli virus. Now, even though it's dead, it still causes a big immune response because it's a foreign body, okay? And then they had 10 control group who hadn't done the Wim Hof method, injected with the E. coli virus. All 10 that had done the Wim Hof method, breath work and ice therapy, all 10 basically kicked out the E. coli virus within 15 to 30 minutes.
Wow, that's impressive, isn't it?
The 10 that didn't do the Wim Hof method were very ill for 3 to 5 days, typical flu symptoms. So they were like, wow, there is clearly something to this. So that started the Wim Hof method, where they started to train coaches, myself being one of them, of course.
So tell us about how you got qualified and how that came about and your experience in there as well.
Right. So I was very fortunate enough to kind of go in at the beginning. Wim Hof is getting more and more famous now. So I've personally trained with Wim Hof a few times now. And it was back to our conversation earlier when I had that cold shower moment and I looked in the mirror and thought, wow. And so in my investigation, I found out about Wim Hof, and I realized through my investigation, there is breath work that comes with it as well. And I was like, breath work? Okay, let's explore this. And there's a particular type of breath work, which you now know how to do, Tom.
Yeah.
And I did it, and I was like, was like, what the hell is this?
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is amazing, right? And so I just went into that, and I was, myself and my friend, we became obsessed with it. So my day job, I'm a landscaper or a labourer and tree surgeon. So I'm working outdoors. And before a day's work in the winter, we were so obsessed with it, we would douse ourselves with hoses in the cold in the morning before work, do breath work. And this was just continual. And we were so obsessed with it, we were like, we need to take this further. And then they showed an advanced workshop in Holland with Wim, 50 people. I did that. That was the first time I trained with him. Blew me away. And I was like, I know I have to learn more. I want to teach this to people. Because just briefly talking about personal training, that was a gift. I loved it. But I started to find out towards the end that physical exercise is incredibly important and very beneficial. But with clients, I was starting to read the subtext of the situation. I knew there were deeper things that I could address beyond exercise, mind, emotion, that kind of thing. Wim Hof method was that bridge where I could investigate deeper. So I then went on to an advanced course in Holland. Sorry, I keep saying that, in Poland, where I climbed Mount Śnieżka.
Yeah.
So to become a qualified instructor, I had to climb a mountain. It was 2.5 hours in -10 to -20 degrees in just my shorts.
Wow.
No gloves, no t-shirt. The toughest physical experience of my life. I did that with Wim. He was on the mountain with us. But after that, and there were some amazing realizations and epiphanies that came to me during that intensive week in Poland.
I'm sure there was, yeah.
Yeah, really intense and deep. Very tough week. Beautiful week, but tough. And when I came back, I was like, I need to show this to people. I need to facilitate this. And that's where the workshops came. That's how Boreas, the company, came about. And we're going from strength to strength. this lockdown has slowed things down a little bit, but it's slowed things down for a lot of people. Yeah,
It certainly hasn't slowed down your enthusiasm, though, has it?
yeah. I mean, once you go there, you just want to share it. It is a gift for sure.
Definitely. So tell us about Boreas. What does it mean and what does it symbolize to you?
So Boreas is the Greek god of winter and the north winds. I chose it for a few reasons. I'm a big superhero fan. I'm into like mythology and superpowers and stuff. And the Wim Hof method, I personally feel, is a superpower.
It is.
It is, right? And Boreas being the god of winter, cold and wind, breath, I thought that's perfect. So we created Boreas Healing, which was, as you know, you attended a workshop.
Yeah.
Where we go deep into mind, body, spirit, that kind of thing. But we also started to attract professional athletes with the techniques. So that's when we launched Boreas Athlete, which was like a subgenre of what we do. And through Boreas Athlete, we've worked with professional athletes. So we've worked with cage warriors fighters, Bellator cage fighters, potentially a UFC fighter in the next few weeks. We'll see. So yeah, it's been very exciting.
Okay, so what sort of parts of their training does your teaching help with, would you say? What improves them as an athlete?
Right, so the Wim Hof method, I use other techniques, but we'll primarily stick with the Wim Hof method. The Wim Hof method increases your immune system, increases recovery, increases your respiratory efficiency. It's basically, the breath work is similar to altitude training or hyperbaric chamber training. It makes the respiratory chain, chemical chain, more efficient, way more efficient. The only thing it doesn't do is give you more red blood cells, but it makes everything more efficient. So obviously for an athlete, that's quite a lot of benefit. Improved recovery, which is also a good thing. But the main strength I personally feel of the Wim Hof method and why I use it is the physical attributes are a bonus. It's the mental toughness it gives you of being comfortable with uncomfortable. And that's what the cold therapy is all about. And that's why the fighters use it. Sitting in an ice bath, if you let it, becomes very uncomfortable. But if we train ourselves that despite knowing that going into that ice bath is going to be very uncomfortable and unpleasant at times, yet we still continue to choose to do it, that empowers us over that circumstance. And what happens is the body and the subconscious remembers how empowered you were through those choices. So that ice bath then becomes you losing your job. That ice bath then becomes your relationship failing, or, coming to an end.
Yeah.
The body goes, okay, this is uncomfortable, but I know I will be okay. And in some ways, I know I will be able to thrive. That's the core strength of the Wim Hof method.
Wow, that's great. I mean, I can definitely relate to it because, as you know, I've been in the ice a few times now.
You have,
it's a difficult thing to do, but if you're guided by a proper instructor like yourself, it's definitely doable. So, if anyone's interested, I'm just going to give a little bit of rundown of my experience of one of your workshops. So, I know you do the workshops in Northampton. Normally, I know with COVID at the moment, there's obviously some restrictions there, but normally you do them in the OMS studio in Kingsthorpe in Northampton, isn't it? Or there's been a couple of different locations, isn't there?
Yeah, so there's the OMS studio in Kingsthorpe. There's Holhaven, which is a permaculture farm in Malton. It's this big yurt. And we've started to take our work nationally. So we did a tour before this second lockdown. We actually did a tour in Lincoln where we went to a martial arts gym and we trained 10 martial artists in the method, which was amazing. So that's another thing we're looking into. I've got to buy a van and just go around nationwide and hold events. If you've got the space and the resources, we can do it.
Oh, that sounds amazing. So yeah, back to my experience through the transformation workshop and the different sessions that I've done with yourself. Obviously, we do the breathing and then we did the yoga, and then we're working towards getting the body and the mind ready to go into the ice, aren't we? So
Yes.
what I'll do in terms of the breathing, for anyone that's listening, I will pop a link in that takes you to the Wim Hof example method so you can practice it if it's something that you're interested in. But yeah, in terms of my experience, you definitely, to just get into the ice straight away, I think that would be a bit of a challenge. You've got to prepare yourself with the breathing, right?
Yes. I mean, as you get more advanced and as you practice more and more, you don't need to do that so much. So now, and I don't mean this with ego, anyone can do this with practice. I don't do the breath work now when I go into an ice or a cold shower. I use it to, again, getting comfortable with uncomfortable. So I just do it. But initially, yes, we start with the breath work because, as you know, amazing things happen to our physiology and our mindset. It doesn't seem as daunting post breath work.
Yeah, definitely. Going in the ice, like one of the coolest things I've ever done. Coolest, no pun intended.
Yeah, no pun intended, right?
But yeah, no, it's just amazing because when you look at the situation, even when you're about to get in the ice, I mean, me personally, I'm like, wow. And everyone's quite nervous about getting in still, aren't they? It's not like you do the breathing and you're like, oh yeah, I'm ready for this. Your body is still like, whoa, no,
I've been doing this nearly 3 years and I still get nervous. That's the point of it. If it was easy, what would be the point of it?
Exactly.
That's not the exercise.
Exactly. I've went in there and there's been, every time I've went in there, I've eventually got to a point where I just feel so calm and my body starts to feel warm. Why is that, Daniel, that your body starts to feel warm when you're in freezing cold water? What is it that happens again? Because on my body, I feel like I'm in warm water after a few minutes.
Yeah. So basically, there is a tremendous amount of adrenaline and cortisol, stress hormone, moving through your body when you go into the ice. And when we use a breath, when we center our mind, when we become grounded in the experience, the fight flight response, which is there, right? When you first get into the ice, what happens? Your mind is screaming, get out, get out.
Literally.
Like, why are you doing this? But it's always the breath. The breath is a key. You go back to the breath. And typically after about 90 seconds to 2 minutes, that's the point where all the warm blood in the extremities go to the core. You know, when you get like cold hands and cold feet, it's the blood going to the core to protect the vital organs, the brain, the lungs, the heart, etc. When that happens and when we can focus our mind, it's very important that we focus the mind during this discomfort, that there's a switch that can occur. And that adrenaline coursing through the body, as opposed to using that energy trying to get out of the ice bath, the body gets to a point where it's like, right, well, you're clearly not going anywhere. So let's circulate this energy. And that's what we call, Wim talks about the Wim Hof method, the inner fire. We start moving this energy through us as opposed to dissipating it out. You know, as opposed to a shotgun, it's a laser. And we're choosing where to point that ferocious energy.
Okay, and you're also a champion of going swimming sort of in a cold environments as well, aren't they? Because there's a whole Wim Hof community, isn't there, even in the UK, of people going swimming in cold places, and it's just the health benefits are truly amazing, aren't they?
Oh yeah, I mean, you can check out yourself, guys. It's all, the benefits are well documented. Not just the Wim Hof method, just cold water swimming, and cold water swimming is on the up. I guess because there's lockdown, people feel trapped, people feel their freedoms are inhibited. So they're going out to rivers and lakes and they're jumping in the water and they're realizing that it's so invigorating that their issues don't seem as big anymore.
Yeah, that's what happens. Literally, it's amazing.
Yeah, you can't, you know, you're not, who in an ice bath sits in there and thinks about their mortgage?
No one.
You just can't, you can try, but that will exhaust you very quickly because you have to focus in the present moment. Nothing like an ice bath will ground you into that moment.
Exactly. We were talking about meditation earlier and how we can use that to get present. But, you know, that comes with the challenges of thoughts passing through, doesn't it? Which is fine. You know, you have to learn to deal with them. But I'm saying with an ice bath, bang, you just got to deal with the present, whether you like it or not. You know, it's like being in a crisis situation in a way, but then you learn to deal with it. It's really probably the coolest thing, one of the coolest things I've ever done. Coolest thing again, but no pun intended.
Well, it's always been great when you've come to the events and you always, you know, you're very courageous. And when you go into that ice bath, you focus very quickly. And like I said before, that focus will benefit you in other areas of your life. The Wim Hof method, the ice baths aren't about getting better in the ice, about lasting longer in the ice. The method is showing you that you are way stronger than you think. And the panic response doesn't serve anyone It's a natural response that when bad news comes our way, a bad circumstance, the fight flight hormones come up and we panic, rabbit in the headlights. But it's like the military, like the SAS, and the Navy SEALs have used the Wim Hof method technique. Navy SEALs Team 6, you don't get more elite than that. One of their units was personally trained by Wim Hof for a weekend. That's the method. Meditation cannot change our external circumstances, but it can change how we react to them. And that's the big difference. Do you face them or do you run away? And again, there's no judgment there. Yeah. But ultimately, this method, for me, has allowed me to face the issue more than run away from it. And that seems to be building, that level of self-confidence. And I've seen that in people who have used the methods as well.
Yeah.
More and more confidence.
So if there's any guys out there at the moment who are going through, like a mental health crisis at the moment, and they're really starting to struggle with things, this is a real way that they can actually start to take action, isn't it? Because obviously there's all the talking therapies and stuff like that, which, by the way, are fantastic. But in terms of a real tangible thing and a real tangible change that they can start implementing now, the Wim Hof method, so the breathing and the ice, is a real way to start to deal with those problems head on, isn't it, Daniel?
Yes, for sure. And likewise, Tom, talking therapy, counseling, psychotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, these are all amazing tools. I've used them myself, especially at the beginning of my journey through my mental health issues. But science is starting to discover that trauma isn't just in the brain. I talk about the mind-body reflection. One is the same thing.
Yep.
Trauma is linked into the nervous system. It's like a scar that goes onto the nervous system. The trauma occurs. The nervous system is the thing that reacts to perceived threats. When we don't heal those scars, the nervous system, the subconscious, sees these threats everywhere and basically overblows them. Techniques like the Wim Hof method bypass the thinking brain and go into the subconscious and into the body. They basically allow the body to heal or work through the pain itself without getting the mind involved. With counseling, it's important to know that we investigate the past and we start to discover the who's, the whys, the where's, the what's. But sometimes we can stay trapped in the intellectual body. We just go over and over and over and over and over. The Wim Hof method goes into the body and releases. So sometimes we don't actually have to engage. Sometimes we have people in our workshops who laugh, who cry, who get angry, and they think they can't consciously connect the two experiences. But I don't know why that happened. It's like, just surrender to it. I said before, it's the body just releasing what no longer serves it. And I know that sounds hippy-dippy, but it just is. The body just can get rid of it. It's like a yawn. That's the best comparison. When you yawn, we are relaxing the jaw muscles. We're taking in more oxygen because we're tired. But what do we do in a social situation? We suppress it, don't we? Yeah. We do that all the time with our bodies. We want to stretch out because our body's tight. The body knows what it needs to do in order to heal. We suppress, we suppress, we suppress. The Wim Hof method bypasses that suppression and lets it all go in a safe, controlled environment.
That's amazing. So it's really good that we've got something there, a strategy that people can start taking action on now. Like I say, I'll put all the links and all of the details in the descriptions and promotional material. So, Daniel, do you have any transformational workshops planned? And if so, when and where are they taking place?
So there are some in the pipeline that I'm working on. They'll probably be at Solhaven in Malton. Okay. I've got to look at some dates. There'll be one in December. We want to try and get one post-lockdown. The best way to find out is liking our Facebook page, Boreas Healing.
Okay.
That's the best way to do it. I do workshops via the Wim Hof platform as well. So I'm on an instructor page, but typically on my Boreas Healing link, I will have a link to go through that to make a purchase of a ticket for those events. But hopefully in the new year, that's where we're really going to push on with these workshops, because now more than ever, these are vitally important.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So yeah, we need to help each other, help our communities, and empower. And empower as opposed to help. We have the tools. It's just remembering how to use them.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. So, Daniel, I know you touched on it earlier that you do have asthma, quite severe asthma. How's the Wim Hof method helped you with your asthma?
Well, I now say I had asthma. So that's another part of the story. So from the age of 15, I was diagnosed with chronic asthma.
Okay.
I mean, really bad asthma. I was hospitalized every single year, especially in summer, numerous A&E admissions. I would be on 3 different kinds of inhalers. I would need cortisol injections, all the way up to the point of doing the Wim Hof method. I started doing the Wim Hof method and I started to see improvements. Then things started to get a little bit worse, and I was like, hang on, this is strange. The Wim Hof method is meant to be really good for inflammatory disorders, chronic inflammatory disorders. And then I started to research, and it's confirmed my belief of sometimes things have to get worse before they get better. You know that saying we use a lot in England of get over it?
Yeah.
I don't agree with that anymore. You move through it.
That's right.
So in moving through something, you need to get uncomfortable. Again, there's that word, uncomfortable, in order to kind of clear effectively. And so when I slowed things down a little bit as I started to dip, and then I started to come back up again. And now it's been, I lose track now, 3.5 years. I've got a video of it when I talked to Wim about it, with 0 hospital admissions, 0 doctor admissions, 0 medication.
That's amazing.
Gone.
That's just amazing.
And I would say it's the Wim Hof method is probably a large part of it, but I like to look at things holistically. So there are various, diet, nutrition, mindset, all that kind of thing that wrap in. But for sure, the Wim Hof method was a primary driver. And you can look online for all the testimonial videos with many issues such as arthritis, MS. It's not just asthma. There's lots of things that it's been able to improve. But yeah, it's like the doctors, I've spoke to them about it and they've said it's a spontaneous remission. I mean, I know otherwise. But yeah, that's how powerful the technique can be for sure.
Wow, that just sort of sums up the method and just how powerful it is, both mentally and physically, I suppose, then really. Thank you so much for joining us today on the show, Daniel. It's been really insightful. I always like to finish up on, if there is somebody listening now, they're going through a really hard time in their life and they're struggling, they're not really sharing their problems with anyone, what would be your best advice for them now?
My best advice for them now is you are not alone. You are not alone. When you are at the depth of despair, anxiety, it feels like no one is out there. It feels like no one could possibly understand or empathize this pain that I'm going through. There are others out there who have known this, who have gone through it, and who have now thrived because of it. And when they look back on those life circumstances, they are actually so grateful that they occurred because it made them a better human being. And it may not feel like that now. And we hear these sayings of, it's only a day at a time, just one more day. When you're in those zones, I understand, I've been there with the suicide. It doesn't feel like it's making a dent. Just reach out. Just make that step to reach out. And even if it's sharing space with someone, I know we're in lockdown now with a Zoom call over a cup of tea, where someone can hold space and you can share. It's calling the Samaritans. It's going out for a 2-minute run, a 2-minute walk. It's those baby steps. Don't feel overwhelmed. I know you may do, but it's the baby steps that all it takes is that first step. That's what I would say.
Wow, what an incredible conversation that was. Thanks so much, Daniel, for joining us. I hope you all enjoyed the podcast. In the next few weeks, we've got a couple more exciting guests coming up. So in the meantime, please do take care. And remember, it's okay not to be okay. Thank you.